or now, Senator Sanders.
By thanking President Obama and thanking Vice President Biden for the degree of impartiality they established during the course of this entire process. What they said in the beginning is that they would not put their thumb on the scales, and in fact they kept their word, and I appreciate that very, very much. Our campaign has been about building a movement which brings working people and young people into the political process to create a government which represents all of us and not just a handful of wealthy campaign contributors. We will continue doing everything that we can to oppose the drift which currently exists toward an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires exercise enormous power over our political, economic, and media life. This is the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. We should not be having millions of senior citizens and disabled veterans struggling to put food on the table because of inadequate Social Security benefits. We should not have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. We should not be having Americans in inner cities, in rural communities, on Native American reservations who have life expectancies lower than many people in third world countries. We should not be having many of our young people leaving college deeply in debt. We should not be having in this great country an infrastructure which is crumbling when we have millions of workers prepared to rebuild that infrastructure. And in the midst of all of that, we should not be having a situation where Wall Street, corporate America, and billionaires are failing to pay their fair share of taxes. These are some of the issues that many millions of Americans have supported during my campaign. These are the issues that we will take to the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia at the end of July. Donald Trump would clearly, to my mind, and I think the majority of Americans, be a disaster as President of the United States. It is unbelievable to me, and I say this in all sincerity, that the Republican Party would have a candidate for president who in the year 2016 makes bigotry and discrimination the cornerstone of his campaign. In my view, the American people will not vote for or tolerate a candidate who insults Mexicans and Latinos, who insults Muslims, who insults African Americans and women. Needless to say, I am going to do everything in my power, and I will work as hard as I can to make sure that Donald Trump does not become president of the United States. I will, of course, be competing in the D.C. primary, which will be held next Tuesday. This is the last primary of the Democratic nominating process. The major point that I will be making to the citizens of the District of Columbia is that I am strongly in favor of D.C. statehood. The state of Vermont, which I represent, has about the same number of residents that Washington, D.C. has, except we have 2 United States Senators and 1 congressman with full rights, while D.C. does not. That does not make any sense. Also, I look forward to the full counting of the votes in California, which I suspect will show a much closer vote than the current vote tally. I spoke briefly to Secretary Clinton on Tuesday night, and I congratulated her on her very strong campaign. I look forward to meeting with her in the near future to see how we can work together to defeat Donald Trump and to create a government which represents all of us and not just the 1%. Thank you very much.
And there you have it, an hour-plus meeting with the president. And if you were expecting to hear some kind of concession from one Senator Bernie Sanders, you did not get that. It was a commitment to the platform that he wants, the issues that he still stands for, and a commitment against the election of the Democrats' opponent, Donald Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee. Interesting that the very last thing that he said, which I was waiting, hanging on at every moment, was that he spoke with Secretary Clinton on Tuesday night. That's not a secret, but that he looks forward to a meeting to work together with Secretary Clinton to defeat Donald Trump. You can read that any way you want, but it sure doesn't say to help her defeat Donald Trump. It may just be so that together, or that she can help me defeat Donald Trump. And one other issue that he brought up, a statement that I think, again, somewhat nebulous, would be that he intends to take these issues that he spoke of. Life expectancy for Native American Indians is lower. College debt is out of control. Infrastructure across the country is crumbling. Wall Street corporate taxes and billionaires failing to pay their taxes is his issue. He says these issues I will take to the convention in Philadelphia in July. How? Does that mean by continuing to fight for the nomination? Or does that mean by edging these things on to the Democratic platform? These are all extraordinarily critical questions that we've been waiting to have answered. And particularly after this meeting with President Obama, which we were assured the president would not outright ask Senator Sanders to step out of this race, but instead it would be an encouragement, it would be a discussion, and clearly there is no decision based on what we just heard from Senator Sanders. Michelle Kosinski standing by live at the White House. I know you were listening in. Give me your take.
Hi, Ashley. Well, it sounds like he's going to stay in, but only up until the end of the election process, up until this D.C. primary. But then, you know, it fully sounds like he's out after that. I mean, he talked about working with Secretary Clinton moving forward, working to prevent Donald Trump from being president. I was surprised he didn't take any questions, though. I mean, that's kind of unlike Bernie Sanders. And when he was here at the White House back in January, for what was a little bit of an awkward meeting after certain things were said on either side, in the places where Sanders and the president do not connect. He took questions then. He had a lot to say. I think he really stated his position here. He wanted to get those policy points out, and he wanted to get them out in the strongest way possible, because this is, in a sense, his last hurrah. Now, keep in mind, he does have an important meeting with Senator Harry Reid this afternoon. They're going to be talking about a way forward, what he wants to do in the Senate. Then he has a rally tonight in Washington, D.C. So I think it'll be interesting to see the tone of that. Again, he'll be able to speak out, but now the sense is he's not working for himself and for his own campaign. He is working for the ultimate goal of the Democratic Party, which is to see Hillary Clinton in office and defeating Donald Trump. Ashley.
Michelle Kosinski, thank you for that. I want to bring in our CNN senior political reporter, Nia Malika Henderson. So, Nia, again, the interesting notion here was that there wasn't any kind of full-throated effort to say, I'm behind Senator Clinton's efforts. Instead, it's I'm going to the last primary in Washington, D.C. I'll continue to fight for D.C. statehood, and then I'll be in Philadelphia. One thing he said right off the top, and I just want to quote if I can, regarding the president, whom he thanked for this meeting, and Vice President Biden, he said, what they said in the beginning is that they would not put their thumb on the scales, and in fact, they kept their word, and I appreciate that very much. But your take on the rest of it?
Yeah, you know, I think it was vintage Bernie Sanders sounding a lot of the themes that he has been sounding for the last 40 years about income inequality and fairness and justice. And even this idea of D.C. statehood. He'll end his campaign, it sounds like, with this last primary next Tuesday. I think a lot of Democrats certainly breathing a sigh of relief. This was the big story. What would Bernie Sanders do? What does Bernie Sanders want? It sounds like he's going to take those issues and concerns to the convention. He didn't say anything about a contested convention, which is what he had been talking about for months and months up until this point. I think we also saw something of the Bernie Sanders that was giving Democrats heartburn, this idea that he still wants to have that final count in that California race that he lost, I think, by 13 points and something like 400,000 votes. But he still wants to, every vote counts. He wants to go into that convention with as many millions of voters that he can, so he can make his case. I think at some point we'll see a more kind of rah speech about Hillary Clinton and maybe them standing arm in arm talking about the Democratic Party and Democratic Party values and the way that Bernie Sanders wants the party to. But for now, I think this is a move that a lot of Democrats want to see. We'll see others. But they are closer now, I think, Democrats to being the kind of united party that they wanted to be going into this convention in Philadelphia.
I don't know why I don't feel that. I honestly
You
don't know why I don't
feel
feel
it.
that. No, I felt that was really couched stuff. Our CNN senior political director, David Chalian, is with us as well. Nima Malika just pointed it out. He wants a recount in California. I mentioned it, Michelle Kozinski and I just spoke of it, David, and that is, he said he's still headed to the wants to take his issues to the convention in Philadelphia in July. Why not just say it? Why not just say, I look forward to meeting with Hillary Rodham Clinton and discussing her bit? Why not just come out and say it? Because to me, I'm not sure.
I am not hearing this the way you're hearing it. I am
Okay.
with Nia. I think the Sanders fight on is what our banner says there right now. I did not hear that, but I heard somebody who wants to go through the last primary and who clearly sees his race for the nomination over.
Why not just say it?
Clearly, I thought, could not have been clearer that he was going to, after the D.C. primary, join forces to focus on defeating Donald Trump. And that means join forces with Hillary Clinton. He said he looks forward to meeting with her in the near future. I think he came out there, he restated his fundamental principles, fighting against an oligarchic trend. That's classic Bernie Sanders right there. He restated his principles, but in no way, I didn't hear a word from him that suggested he did not believe that the race for the nomination had been settled.
And that was my point. I feel like it's not over at all. He's continuing this this conversation. Guys, I would ask you a million more questions if it weren't for this other thing that's percolating up in New York right now, which I also have to show our viewers. So I'll say thank you to the three of you, and then let you also know that Donald Trump has emerged from this giant donors meeting that's taking place on Fifth Avenue at his penthouse and his headquarters and his apartment, beg your pardon, not came out, went in. So effectively, I would assume meeting is underway. We said it before, and I'll say it again, to be a fly on the wall, because so many of those donors have been holding their hands in their pockets for a long time.